Hi, my name is Vladimir Hildrink and I am an SAP developer at one of SAP's partners in the Netherlands. This presentation has been built in UI5. That's the latest HTML5 framework of SAP. SAP makes their most recent front ends with that framework, and also the developers of the partners make many front ends with this framework. It's an HTML5 framework, and for this we need to use a lot of JavaScript. That's why I give this presentation to my colleagues and to other SAP developers. I have been giving this presentation at the UI5Con in the Netherlands in 2016, and I have been giving this presentation in Frankfurt in 2017. At the second UI5Con, which was the second UI5Con of Frankfurt. I will tell you something about the 6th version of JavaScript and the 7th version of JavaScript. The 7th version is divided into the 2016 version and the 2017 version. You saw that these versions are not very big. There are just a few new functions which I want to show. The biggest delta came with the 6th version, and I want to show 8 of the most important new features of JavaScript from that version. ECMAScript Next, that is the name for the latest version. It doesn't have a number yet, so it's a dynamic name. I told you a little bit about myself already. What I still have to tell about ECMAScript is that ECMAScript, ECMA is the international organization who defines the standards for ECMAScript or for JavaScript. That's why they call it ECMAScript. It is like W3. It is like what W3 does for CSS. That's what ECMA does for JavaScript, and that's why I call it ECMAScript a lot in my presentation. But if I talk about ECMAScript 7, then I also talk about JavaScript 7. Also important in this introduction is this sheet. Here I have 5 browsers. And I want to show to you that every browser has different HTML engines, but also that the browsers have different JavaScript engines. For example, I have been working on an application which needed to be at the customer running on Internet Explorer on the desktop, and it needs to be running on in a Safari shell on the iPad. It was a hybrid app, by the way, but we were building it in Chrome on the desktop. We tested it in Chrome as well. Then, when we are running it in Internet Explorer, or when the testers were running it in Internet Explorer, they found differences quite a lot, and that's because the HTML engines are different. These HTML engines, they interpreted the HTML code and the CSS code a little bit different from each other. The problems were not so big at the differences between the Apple and our tests at Chrome. And that is because in that time Safari used WebKit and Chrome also used WebKit. And nowadays Chrome had made a branch of it and is working with a quite similar HTML engine called Blink right now. Here we have the JavaScript engines. Here you see more differences. Firefox is working with the very famous SpiderMonkey. The SpiderMonkey is also the JavaScript engine for XSJS. The people who work with the HANA database know about that. Server-side JavaScript language is Node.js. Also, the people who work with HANA know about Node. It is running on the V8 engine, which is the engine from Google. In this presentation, I will also show you an example where the Firefox browser interprets the code a little bit different than the Chrome browser. I give this presentation in Chrome this moment, but I have my Firefox browser here open and ready. Versions, some of them are updated automatically, like Edge. Edge is the browser of Microsoft. They have rebuilt it totally, and it is that's why they have stopped developing Internet Explorer, which goes up to 11. Versions here in Node also a little bit interesting. At Node they have a lighter version, a bigger version, and they made a few branches, and they're working on 4 different branches right now because they also have version 7. The version 7.5 is not, it doesn't mean that it is newer than the version 4 point something, because they work on the 4 different branches at the same time. I have a few links for you. You can find them back on gs2017.subdeveloper.nl. And these links, this one about the ECMAScript availability matrix and Babel.js, that are the links I want to show you right now. This is the ECMAScript compatibility table. And here you see that functionality of ECMAScript 6 or JavaScript 6, which came out in June 2015. It's only for 11% supported in Internet Explorer 11. These browsers, Edge, are automatically updating, and the latest version of Edge, which is version number 15, 95% of the functionality is there. At Firefox, the latest version of Firefox and the latest version of Chrome, you see that 97% of the functions are available. And this is a browser I also want to show to you. It is Babel.js, I call it. And it is a JavaScript compiler. So if I have very new JavaScript code and I put it here on the left side, then it can be it returns you code which is compatible for another browser, for a lower browser, for the lower JavaScript version. What you also can do, and what I will done in this presentation as well, is, well, here we have JavaScript 7. There you see that here, for example, Edge is for 58% supported. And I was not able to try the latest things, the latest features. Here you see that, for example, asynchronous iteration and object rest and spread properties, they are available in Babel already, so I can experiment with it. But they are not available in other browsers yet. So let's start with the 8, in my opinion, the most interesting new features of JavaScript 6. It is introduced in June 2015, as I told you. And this is the one I want to start with because it's a nice one. You have here a function, and now you can give default values to that function, and the default value can even be a function. So that means that when someone calls this function foo and forgets to give the input parameter, then this function mandatory will be called to get that input parameter, and it throws an error that the parameter should be given. And that's very interesting if we work together with other developers and we want to make the input values mandatory. Here I have the examples of destructuring. This is code we already know. And here I want to show you what happens if I use this rest functionality. If you use this code, rest will be a variable with it will be an array with the values 3, 4, and 5. If you use this, do not forget to use the dots. They are not, they are there for a reason. That's how we write the code. What I also can do is I can assign the values to A and B dedicated. So here I have A and B. I can switch the order of it, so it's dedicated. So after this, B will be 1 and A will be 2. B is 1 and A is 2. What I also can do is having default values. If I do not give this second value, then the y will be 5. But if I enter a 2 here, then the y will be 2 at the end. I can switch values in a very fast way, because here you see that A is 2 and B is 1. But nowadays, if we want to switch those values, I need 3 lines of code, and I even need to use another value. C is B, then I say B is A, and I say A is C, to switch the values. So now you see that A is 1 and B is 2. But I can use one line of code to switch it back. A is 2 and B is 1. In this last example, I ignore values. And what I also do in this last example, I use the return of a function to fill these values. If I run this piece of code, A will be 1 and B will be 3, where the 2 will be ignored. For off loops. The old way before ES5 to make a loop was this way. Since ECMAScript 5, it is possible to use the for each functionality. It looks very nice, but you cannot use break, continue, or return in this. Now we have for in and for off. For off is new. What I want to tell you about for in, the difference about for in and for off is that with for in, you loop through the elements of an object. With for off, you loop through the elements of an array. So here in this case, I have here the my array object, because I add a property to it, which is called count. And if I loop over it, it takes all the elements of the array, but also the properties. So the result of this will be 7. 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 7. Here you see that if I loop with for off, the result will be 4, because it doesn't take this property into the loop. Now, how I can keep in mind that for in is for an object and for off is for an array, is that if we learn coding and we talk about object-oriented programming, most of the time as an example we use a car. And the car is something we get in. If we learn programming with arrays, then we talk about bananas and about grape and about apples, and that kinds of fruit we take off a table. So then we use for off. Now I would like to tell you about promises. I have here a promise object, and that promise object resolves after 2 seconds. There's a timeout. And after 2 seconds, it will resolve this data. It will return this data. Then I have here the then function and another then function, and I can chain those functions. But what happens in that then function is that when this functionality is resolved, then it will do this. It will execute this. And this data element, that is what is being returned. So it says success in Eindhoven, hello world. Immediately after that, this functionality will be called success in Eindhoven 2, but nothing will be returned now. If I unmark this code, foobar will be returned, and that's what I can use here. This it says success in Eindhoven 2, foobar. I can throw an error in here, And that means that these thens will not be executed. I can also throw the error here, and that means that this then will not be executed. So I can throw the errors in different places. I would like to copy it and show it to you. So here you see that the party is started, and after 2 seconds it says hello world and undefined. I can return foobar here, and then it says hello world and foobar. And what I can do is I can throw an error. I can do it here or on one or of the other places. The thens after that will not be called. What I can do is I can wait till all these promise objects are resolved. So here I have the 4 promise objects. And yeah, it will be resolved after 1 second for all of them in this case. And it will it will have all the data which is resolved, which is returned. It will have it in an array. I can also use promise.raise, and then this functionality will be called as soon as one of these 2 objects is being resolved. Now I have given this presentation in Eindhoven and in Frankfurt, as I told you, and there I used a clicker. That clicker that has the page up and the page down button. So I have a little movie. Here I use promises with page down and page up. And with a long press, I go into or out of the menu. So now I press long down, so I go into that menu. Now I press long up, and I go out of that menu. With short presses, I go, with short presses, I go down and I go up. I had to develop that with promises, because here I have 2 objects, the timeout, which returns a long, and the other object is the function connected to an event, and that will resolve short. Then I have promise.raise, and as I told you, the first one that will resolve will give its data back. So with a short press, I execute this piece of code, and with a long press, I execute this piece of code. Promises can also be useful when you connect to the backend and you want to do something on the front end as soon as possible, as soon as the first thing is returned. Or you only want to do something at the front end as soon as everything is resolved. Promise all and promise raise. Arrow functions. Here I have an array, and I have this function which I can do on that array. In the old way of writing this code, I have this line, and it has 2 disadvantages. I have to say it like this. This is the new way of code, and it has 2 benefits. It is shorter. The notation is shorter, because I do not have to write this whole text of function, and I can do a fast return. I can return an element of that object or array. Another good thing is that I can do this. With this old code, I cannot use this, because that is out of scope. So I have to say var that is this, and then I can use that to get this property. With the new way of calling these functions, with arrow functions, I can still use this It's in the same scope. Here there's a sheet about constants. With this, with constant, I can define a constant. And if I try to change the constant, it will throw an error. Here I have a piece of code where I have this .enum, which refers to this constant, and this enum, which refers to this constant. Then if I try in that scope to change that constant again, it throws an error, of course. But it should be two different numbers. Well, what happens in Firefox if I do that? This is a little bit shorter code because I will not throw errors. And here you see if I run this piece of code, the numbers who are returned are 24 and 8. I copy this code and I put it in Google Chrome. And then you see the difference between how the browsers are interpreting it. Now you see that the number 8 is not returned, but here they say that it is undefined. So the two browsers work different. And I showed you the table with the HTML engines and the JavaScript engines. Here I have an example of where the different browsers work differently with this code. Of an object, I can change these values. Here I can say I have an object with a key and a value, and give me the key. Well, that will be value. If I try to change the key to Rapunzel, that value will become Rapunzel. Then I try to freeze that object, and I try to change it to frozen. It won't throw an error, but the value is still Rapunzel. In an array, I can freeze that array, and if I say, okay, I want to push another element to that array, then it will throw an error. So if after this, the console.log and the names will be John and Johnny. That were constants. Here I have scoping, and I just want to show it in the console. So I open the console again. Here you see that with let and const in this if statement, an error will be there because sun count is not defined. If I do that with var, or if I remove const here, then the two numbers are being returned. And that is scoping. Let and const are here the elements that are useful in this scope. Then I want to show you something about classes. There are a few new keywords: class, constructor, static, extend, and super. And what they want to do at JavaScript is, they want to attract the people who work with class-based, object-oriented programming languages. Well, as you know, that JavaScript is prototype-based. This doesn't make JavaScript real class-based. It is sugar syntax. I have here an example of class-based code. There is a difference between class-based and prototype-based oriented programming. As I told you, it is just a sugar syntax. The advantages of prototype-based languages that you can change things at runtime, and it is also more copying the prototypes instead of instantiating the objects. Now, why JavaScript was prototype-based? It's historical. JavaScript is not being compiled yet. And to have it prototype based makes JavaScript more flexible. But since Chrome is there, and since, as I've shown to you, that we have the server-side language Node.js, it is important to try to compile the JavaScript code to make things faster on the front end as well as on the back end. And in my opinion, the people who are going to develop Node.js applications, for them it will be important to use the class-based way of programming. Yeah, because compiled code will be faster on the backend. Another reason I told you that the community for prototype-based languages is shrinking. So that's why they have introduced class-based language. The next step that can be taken by the ECMA International is that they introduced functions like public and protected, because they're not there yet. It's a long way to go to have it real class-based object-oriented. That was my part about JavaScript 6. Now I want to show you a little bit about JavaScript 7. JavaScript 7 is introduced in June 2016. That's 1 year later. The most important things are these. With the double star you can now power 2 numbers, so the result of this will be 8. There's also a new function which is called include, which is a function that can be used on an array. So here, if you use include on this array with this number, it will return true. But with a number which is not in that array, it will return false. 2017, that's the second part of JavaScript 7. Here I have an asynchronous function. Here I have an asynchronous function, but here I have a function which will resolve after 2 seconds. And it will resolve after 2 seconds. And what I can do with this asynchronous function, I can say, here I have a variable with the await function. Then I can say, okay, resolve after 2 seconds, the number 20. I can make the variable b wait and use this with 30. And then I can say, I can do something with these numbers. And that's a serial call. So it takes 4 seconds because it are 2 different calls. I can also do that in one line, these await functions, and then this is being called in parallel. So it will resolve after the 2 seconds. That's about ECMAScript 7, so that went very fast. And ECMAScript Next, for ECMAScript Next I have a few little things. I've shown you this before, that rest will be the array of 3, 4 and 5 after this piece of code. And I can also do that with, do a few things with objects now. If I run this piece of code, Z will be the object of A and B. And I want to show you a little thing with Babel now, because this piece of code is, I'm going to copy this. This piece of code is not available in my browser yet. It doesn't work. Now I'm going to try it in Babel. And what does Babel do is it gives me code which I can execute now. And then I can say console.log. I want to return Z. It's the object of 3 and 4, A and B. Babel can interpret it. So if I say console.log z here, I see here down under that an object is being logged. So it works now this moment, this JavaScript program. What I can do is, what I can't do is leaving this empty. You see that it will throw an error. But if I want to have this piece of code, I can just copy this, go to my browser, and say, okay, I want to have this piece of code. The only thing I do not need to do is having x and y. That was what I wanted to try out. I leave this empty, x and y. I can say enter, and here I have my JavaScript hack. I call it my JavaScript hack. You see that I still can use it. What I also can do after I run this piece of code, I can say give me a little moment. Okay, what I do here is I have here this object. I am destructing it. And then I am constructing it again. How is it called? It's called spreading. Then I'm spreading it again. And it will be an object again. Then in my presentation, I would like to tell you something about SIMD. It is, if you are a front-end developer, I think this is not super important. If you're a backend developer and you develop it with Node.js, or you develop really on the core of in the core of libraries, which needs to have optimized performance, then this might be very interesting. What I'm doing here is I reserve a little piece of memory, and I put in that little piece of memory, I put values there. And those values are now in the memory very close to each other. If I have this instruction, I instruct the processor to get these values of memory and to return, to do something with it, to add it. Of course, these instructions are limited, but this is super fast because all these values are very close to each other in a specific piece of memory, so it's very typed, and I want to do something with it very fast at one time. Very interesting for Node developers or developers who are developing on the core of a library. But I have to say it is in ECMAScript Next, and that means that they are building and the specifications. They are building this functionality right now. It is not in the browsers yet. Global, that is a function which can be used also server-side in Node.js, because in a browser, I use window, for example, to have a global variable. I can give window a property, and then that is global. In Node.js, I can use global to define global variables. And in the future, this might be available in browsers as well to have it uniform. Asynchronous functions. Well, the problem here is that it is in a phase where I cannot even test it in Babel, but what I would like to show you is that the asynchronous functionality, asynchronous iteration functionality, that is divided into the 4 await loops and the asynchronous generator. And I have to tell what a generator is first. Well, this is an example of a generator. And when I make an object, when I make this generator as a function, then a lot of numbers will be generated. It's not an object, I think. A lot of numbers will be generated. And I can say, well, generator.next is a value. Oh, sorry, then generator.next, and then I get the first value. And then when I call this, I can even call it a second later, I get the second value. But meanwhile, on the backend, this generator function have made a lot of values already for me. So it's there, it's ready to use. It can be used for optimizing performance. What an asynchronous generator will be in the future is probably that it can be used, that it can wait till I call the next one. And I do not know if that will be in this function itself, or that the calls will be wait for each other. With the for or wait of loops, I can call that asynchronous generator, but this is future and it is not even ready yet in Babel, so I cannot test it and I cannot prove anything about it yet. Within JavaScript, they will go more class-based again. They have decorators, famous from Python language. With the decorators, it is a kind of using super. With decorators, you can give to a class, you can add things to classes, and it is a little bit more flexible than with the super command. I can also give properties to the classes in the future, because it's next. And what also will be available in the future is trimming. I have to say it is already available in many different browsers, but what ECMAScript, what ECMA International does right now is, well, the browsers have already implemented this functionality, but it's not standardized yet. So they have decided to standardize it. So this is in ECMAScript Next, so that will probably be ECMAScript 8, but it is already available code. And that was my presentation about the latest features in JavaScript. I will probably put this video on YouTube or on Twitter or on my other social networks like LinkedIn, or maybe my own website, subdeveloper.nl somewhere. And there you can probably leave questions below. Of course, in Eindhoven and in Frankfurt there were also questions. In Eindhoven there was a question, when is this available? Well, ECMAScript 6 is available since June 2015, but as I told you, you have to keep in mind that it is not ready in Internet Explorer yet. ECMAScript 2016 is available since half 2016. But they're the same problem, and what I want to show you is also that when you find some piece of code on the internet which doesn't run on Internet Explorer 11 because of this, then you can always use Babel to change the code. That was it for my presentation. Thanks for watching.